Welcome to the Josh Button Podcast, where we discuss health, wellness, and outliers from society. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Josh Button Podcast. This is episode 60. Today, I'm joined by Frank Bohne. Is it Bohne?
It's Bohne, yeah.
Frank Bohne. And look, man, I like I was telling you just ahead of the show, your story is fascinating to me. You got into this carnivorous diet and this raw meat diet, which I want to talk about, but also your health background. You overcame anorexia, and I want to know all about that, how you came to defeat the dragon, so to speak, and how you got into this diet in the first place. And then we'll get into all the benefits and other things about your lifestyle that I think are also extremely fascinating. But yeah, tell us your story a little bit, brother.
Well, I guess anorexia, that came to me when I was around 19, 20 years old. Leading up to that, I was always a very health conscious guy. I got into nutrition, honestly, when I was like 11. Just wanted to better my health. I didn't like seeing how the adults around me were, suffering from nutrition. So I was able to put two and two together. And, going into high school, I was big into paleo, big into CrossFit, and all this stuff. And I loved it. Working out in my barn at home, before and after work, after school. And, but I think what really hit me was when I left high school in 2014, I lost all the structure and everything that came with it. And so I was just lost. It was really weird to be lost after high school, but I was just really lost and trying to figure out where to go. And I remember I was trying all these things, just, figuring out. And I remember I was taking welding classes, and during a lunch break, I stumbled into a bookstore and I got this vegan magazine for whatever reason, as I cared about the environment. It was called Thrive by Brendan Brazier, whatever his last name is. And it just hit me so hard. I remember I was in my welding booth, just all depressed, not knowing where I was going. And I just saw these smiling faces, saving the planet. It just looks all purposeful. And I just went vegan from that point. And yeah, my health pretty much just declined immediately from there. And I can go in long stories, but that was 2014. All in all, still struggling through many different colleges and whatnot because my health was deteriorating super quickly. And I was living in denial of veganism, like a lot of people do, I think. And you feel like you can do it. It's for the planet. It's the right thing to do. You don't want to kill the animals or anything like that. And before I knew it, I was at Johns Hopkins anorexia unit, eating disorder unit for anorexia, summer of 2016. And yeah, I was just really dying, for real. I'm 6'1" for reference, and the lowest I ever saw my weight was 121 pounds. And so that's kind of wild. And I come from a pretty large genetic, background. I feel like look at my dad and whatnot. Rather big people, and so that was just wild. I took it really far, with caloric restriction and just eating pretty much only plants for a while. And yeah, so it was weird. So in and out of colleges, and so yeah, again, I went to Johns Hopkins for 10 weeks. I got 40 pounds on me, and that was a rough program. For sure. Johns Hopkins is it's world-renowned hospital, and I'm from Maryland originally, and that's where Hopkins is at, is Baltimore, Maryland. And so that was just the closest one. It was, very well known. And so my mom got me in there. I didn't know what I was in for. She didn't know what I was in for, but yeah, there's a lot of force feeding, it was intense. It was really intense going through that. And but, I'm happy I went through that because, well, one, I would have died if I didn't. To be completely honest, looking back on it, I think I would have died within probably a week had my mom not took me in there. Because when you're at that stage of anorexia that I was also biking intensely at that time. And I just remember looking back on it, I was not satisfied with how I felt even then. I didn't have really body dysmorphia issues per se, but I love the high of being in that starvation state. It's a weird feeling, and I wanted that to the max. I was ready to bike myself to death. And I think my mom picked up on that, and so she snuck me in.
So
It
yeah,
is
so
what it is.
you were malnourished from the diet, but over exercising as well, and really pushing the limits with it, huh?
Yeah, they call that athletorexia. It's like mixed between athletic and anorexia. I don't know how you pronounce it, but athletorexia. And so I think that's kind of what I had. It's it affects women more, body dysmorphia, just is what it is. And for me, like it gave me something to focus on every day, which is what I wanted. Um, I loved the feeling of every day I could feel my heart beat slower, and it kept me awake at the same time. It was a weird drug. Starvation is a weird drug. Being in that fight or flight state, the adrenaline, the cortisol, and I was trapped in that cycle. And I hate that I had to go through Hopkins. Not a fan of the doctors there and how they did things. I ultimately like relapsed according to them. Because 2 years later, I lost it all. Lyme disease stuff and whatnot. I went back down to 121 pounds again in 2018, and that's ultimately what led me to carnivore. Really, um,
How did
yeah,
they? How did they address it? Did they give you a balanced diet, IVs? Did they recommend anything after you checked out of the program that they wanted you to stick to? And how did that feel for you?
it was definitely very structured. It was structured. Like I don't blame them because it's Western medicine. It's just how that works. I don't think any of them were outrightly evil, maniacal people. It felt that way in the moment. But it's very structured in like how much of a certain food group to eat. It's very balanced according to them, and like certain meal times of the day, when to eat, what we're going to eat, and you could kind of have some choices. But when they notice that you're starting to make the same choices each day, then they will impede and be like, I'm making the choices for you. And so you lose all freedom pretty much. And for me, they also have like each person has their own caloric like needs for that day. For me, not to brag or anything, but they had to design a specially high one for me because I struggled to put on weight with all that sugary, carb dense crap that they gave me. I really struggled with it, and so they had to put me up to 4,500 calories, and we weren't moving at all. You weren't allowed to walk even. You had to sit there all day, and in a hospital, and you're just staring at each other. You're just like it was mental warfare. But it united us. In hindsight, it was kind of like us versus them mentality, it was cool to feel that. But yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
So the primary focus was then just adding pounds and adding size to you any way possible. But with their nutrition guidelines, obviously there was some misdirection. Was it low fat?
In hindsight, I think it was like the food groups that they had. It was like fats, vegetable, protein, carbs, or whatever. I actually can't really remember. It's like 4 or 5 different like food groups that they like kind of rearranged, and it was not a lot of fat. To them, it was balanced. And so, in like their defense, um, even though I was drinking like 4 Ensures a day, which are you familiar with that? And so I had that like 4 times a day, along with all these desserts and whatnot. But it was meeting their specific food groups, and which was wild to me. But it was constant sugar and carbs all day, and I just like in hindsight, like, look, you're not going to heal anorexia if you're not going to heal the gut first, because I'm a big believer in the whole gut brain connection, and they just targeted. They annihilated my gut, to be completely honest. And I was there in 2016. There was another woman there in her 60s that had gone there every 4 years. She couldn't help it, and they kept blaming her. It was insane. It's just if you can't fix the gut, you're not going to fix the person.
Yeah,
That's what I've learned.
she was following their instructions to a T most likely, and then would find herself in the same loop. She couldn't really do
She
anything
never
about it.
argued. She just, to them, kept failing, apparently, which is really sad.
It's incredibly unfortunate how badly we've gone as far as dietary recommendations, and then even dealing with this stuff, even if their heart is in the right place, it seems like, especially with, like you said, you're 6'1", you come from a bigger family, a little bigger genetics, man, you have high protein and fat, needs. I went on the plant-based diet myself. I found myself in poor health after 6 months. The first few months felt great, but after 6 months, I was deteriorating and I was not myself, and I lost a ton of weight. And I'm glad I picked up on the signs early, compared to what some people have gone through. But it's the same thing. Like if you're not in the right state of mind and getting the right advice, it's going to be a vicious loop. So
Yeah.
you got out of there. What made you turn the page? What made you take this into your own hands?
Well, that was 2016, and I kept then I honestly I kind of went back to my old ways. Like I'm not gonna lie, I went back to eating more plant based, but I incorporated more like vegetarian stuff, eggs, cheese, whatever, and but it was whole food plant based. I was following almost like their food recommendations, like suggestions, food group suggestions, but just in plant based form, which they never really told me not to do, I guess, but. So I guess it was kind of my fault. But anyways, wasn't until like spring of 2018, February 2018, my weight was just crashed again. And so I was at University of Maryland at the time, couldn't really do anything, but my mom, she had no choice. And so she's taking me to everyone around Maryland to go to by this point, like doctors, but she took me to a naturopathic doctor in Georgetown, Maryland. Dr. Shakar was her name, and she diagnosed me with Lyme disease. And she said like my body was just totally infested with Lyme disease, from the tick bite and everything. And it's big in Southern Maryland. And I mean, I grew up with tick bites almost every day where I'm from. I remember like waking up in the middle of the night just yanking ticks off me. So I was just used to it. And so that's what she diagnosed me with. And I have my own opinions about Lyme disease. I don't know if actually, I don't. I don't really believe at all that what we think is Lyme disease is Lyme disease. I'll just leave it at that. But that's whatever. What really led me to Carnivore was she put me on 10 weeks of antibiotics, IV antibiotics. And so every day for 10 weeks, pretty much, I got a needle in my arm blasting me with antibiotics. And I was already like underweight to begin with. And she knew that. She was nervous. She was calculated. And she, being a naturopathic doctor, she didn't want to do what she did, but she said I had just a special case of so much Lyme parasites in me. She wanted to just kill all that. But that destroyed me a lot. By the end of it, I was back to 121 pounds. I just remember 121 because I felt like if I went a pound lower, I'd probably die. But yeah. And I remember after the antibiotics, I was just lost. She kind of helped me, lead me on, like, do this, like dietary wise. Just nothing worked. And this was, fortunately, summer of 2018. Carnivore is big. Classic Joe Rogan, Sean Baker on Joe Rogan podcast. I saw that. It's like, this is stupid. This is going to kill me. But, a little bit after that, I was just still struggling rather, and to put on weight and to get strong. And so I gave Carnivore a shot, and it just helped me immediately, like instantly. I don't even know what about it, but it was crazy. Just getting all those nutrients in, and then from 2018 to now, it's just been kind of a wild ride of trying new things, feel my body adjust to what I do, and it's been weird.
Initially, were you cooking?
Yes, yeah. The raw part didn't come in until probably February of 2019 when I learned of Agenus, who Wes brought that up to you, Agenus Finder Planets, raw primal stuff, and I learned of that in 2019, and I thought that was interesting. It never really scared me too much, like parasites and whatnot. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll do it, and I liked it. And so, but I was eating like both raw and cooked at the same time, but predominantly raw carnivore since 2022.
Awesome. So did you still have plant-based? Did you still have carbs? Did you have other items in your diet at the beginning, or did you make a full-fledged dive into carnivore?
It was about 60 days strict carnivore, and then I started bringing things in without really any success. Like I kept bringing like random things in, like tomatoes, cucumbers, squashes. It was still paleo, I never did like nuts and seeds. Well, yeah, nuts and seeds. I guess that's paleo, but I still kept it like
Right.
fruits and vegetables. And I just like, what am I doing? This is silly. But I did settle on, and what I still do today is fermented vegetables like sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented pickles. I love that stuff. Kind of like what Dr. Sean O'Mara talks a lot about. I love everything that he says. That resonates a lot with me. So every now and then, if I feel like I need minerals or sodium or whatever, and I don't have oysters and whatnot or blood, I'll have some sauerkraut and some pickles. That just feels good with me. And so that's as crazy as I get with the plant world, at least.
Yeah, it tends to be great for the gut health, especially after something like antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
So you made this transition into carnivore. You started cutting out the fruits and vegetables. What was the deciding factor that raw was doing better for you than cooked?
Well, I remember in late 2021, I was doing a lot of like bone broths and stocks and whatnot, slow cooked meats. It was and like Weston A. Price, Gaps, stuff like that, like gut healing protocols. And though that I'm sure stocks and broths are great, they have a time and place. I noticed by the end of 2021, I was feeling very sluggish and very slow. And I remember seeing a lot of people talk more about raw meat. And though I've been incorporating some of that here and there, by that point, it wasn't like a ton of it. And so by early 2022, I just started eating more and more of it, just out of like necessity, feeling like good from doing it. And then it just turned into like, this is all I want. Like, this is just all I want. And I would have cooked meat every now and then to test it out. But I'm like, it's not the same anymore.
Right.
And it's super weird. I did it, the raw meat, kind of out of convenience and out of desire as well. I know that there's like the science, everything behind raw meat and parasites and bacteria being good. I'm not an expert on all that. I just know it makes me feel so much better. A lot more energy, the strength, better sleep, digestion than cooked meat. I'm not a Nazi against cooked meat or anything at all. I don't think it's like inherently terrible, but I feel like raw meat's optimal. I really do.
Yeah. Is that what got you into butchering? Or were you a
Yeah,
butcher
actually.
before? Yeah.
Well, I would say to be completely honest, like the butchering part, I learned of this guy in the raw primal space. His name is Derek Nance. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He's in Kentucky, and he's a raw primal guy. He's done it for over 15 years now. And I learned of him in 2019. He slaughters and butchers his own sheep for like the quality of the meat that he can get and like the nose to tail aspect. And I loved everything he stood for. And so I'm kind of just like copying what he's doing, to be completely honest. Uh, Everything I do, I just kind of stole from him. And so I started butchering in 2020. I was still like, there was goats or whatever, and up here in Vermont, and I was cooking it and everything. But yeah, so kind of the butchering part came in when I was still cooking, but it really picked up when I was eating more raw.
And you've butchered, I know you were butchering chickens the other day, but what else have you actually processed yourself?
Yeah, so I work on the chicken farm where we slaughter and kill all the birds. So chickens and turkeys. And for me personally, I've also slaughtered and butchered goats and sheep.
I know you were working with somebody else on a goat not too long ago either. Saw that post and I was.
Oh yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
You brought the goat head home.
Yep. Yeah. It was probably a sheep head. It's been a while since I've had goat. I kind of actually like almost avoid goats because they're the only thing that has made me like thrown up, and so it's been a while.
It was blood, right?
Yep, exactly. Goat's blood. The only thing in these 6 years of doing stupid things, the goat's blood has made me thrown up. It's super weird. I don't know what.
So that's the one negative experience, or that was just the one that made you puke and one thing.
Yeah, it was pretty much the raw goat's blood. And I've had goat again later after that. It was like cooked, slow cooked goat, and it made me sick for a few days. And I'm just like, I guess you win, goats. I'm just not going to eat you. I was
So
going to sheep.
I was gonna say, you have given blood another try though? What right? You went something else when sheep blood.
Yeah. Here's actually sheep's blood right here. I I haven't really eaten anything yet today, but I'll eat later. But yeah, no, I still kind of like blood is the hardest part of the animal for me to consume, I would believe, because of that negative experience a while back, but also it's a very rich flavor. I'm not sure if you've had it, but it's very iron dense.
Yeah,
And
I've
so it
done.
can be nauseating.
Yeah, I've done blood sausage, and that was enough, honestly. And I had it in
Mhm.
South America, and I don't know if it was just extremely gamey at that moment, and like you said, iron rich, and I just it wasn't for me at the time. And I'm not
Yeah.
ruling out anything for my future, but I had that experience as well. I was like, no, not today.
Yeah. And I've heard that from people as well. Like, how do you drink blood? It's so dense. And like, I don't really know. I kind of just do it and hope for the best.
Yeah. So, what is the? Would you consider that the wildest thing that you've consumed? Blood?
Um, well, I've eaten a pig placenta before down at White Oak Pastures when I interned there. That was pretty wild. I
Dude,
kind of,
tell us
yeah.
about White Oak Pastures. That place is
Mhm.
definitely gained some notoriety, and it was something I found like 4 or 5 years ago. It was awesome.
Yeah, I actually interned there 4 years ago, which was at its peak, like Carnivore Prime, because all the cool Carnivore people were heading down there and sponsoring it, and Paul Saladino was sponsoring it when he was Carnivore and everything, and so that's what brought me down there, and it was cool. I was down there for 3 months as an intern, early 2020, and I learned a lot about like farming and nutrition as well, just existing there with cool people, but. So that was fun. But yeah, there were pig placentas everywhere just because they just give birth all the time, I guess. And so I just picked one up and I actually slow cooked it. Pig placenta, I've killed and eaten snakes there. That's the one that comes to mind. I'm sure there's been other things, various insects, but that's nothing special.
I saw somebody brought you trout, I believe it was, and you
Oh,
popped
yeah.
a trout eyeball. I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, eyeballs are great. There's like a fat behind the eyeball because it connects to the brain, of course, and so it's a unique tasting fat. And also, like when you eat the eyeball, it's just like a burst of salt water. You know, fish or sheep or goat, whatever. It's always gonna be salty, and so it's really good. But those fish also had a lot of sperm, which is also called milt, M-I-L-T, and eggs in them as well. And like fish roe eggs just make you feel phenomenal, and I absolutely love it.
So, what is the most detestable thing that you've had besides the blood? Then, I guess, is there something that people will have a really hard time trying and they shouldn't try first?
Well, I guess I don't know if this really answers your question. Chyme, the Chyme, that is the Inuit are known for eating that. Is the pre-digested innards within the animal. So it's grass. It's grass or whatever they eat. So I guess it's a plant, but it's filled with all their digestive juices of the animal's gastrointestinal tract. And so that post is up there of me from a year ago, actually, and I forgot about that part. So I guess I don't know if that's part of the animal or what, because it's like grass, but you're taking it right out of the stomach of the animal, and indigenous people did that. So I was like, I'm gonna give it a shot. Yeah, that's not for the faint of heart. Um,
It's in the midst of fermentation, right? It's like pre-digestion and digestion, so they're fermenting it and starting to process it themselves.
yep, exactly that. And so it's not like you. It's still very fibrous grass. It's not like sauerkraut. You can just chomp on it. You just can only absorb like the digestive juices, and it's really bad. But I've
Yeah.
also had bile too. So bile from the gallbladder, uh, which a lot of people might find very bitter, but I've come to really love it
Really?
because it makes me
So,
just feel great.
you know what? I was having this conversation with my parents the other night, and I never really explained it to them. After I was plant based for going on a year, I went to Indonesia. And Bali, if you've never been there, is a huge vegan like
Mhm.
positive and just tons of options to eat plant based. I was eating plant based dinners for the first week or two I was there, and I was there with a couple teen boys that I was working with, and they were eating cheeseburgers every night. And these Australian beef cheeseburgers just smelled so good to me. it was mind boggling, and I didn't understand it. So I ordered one night, and is just breaking this plant based diet for months and months. And the first bite I had literally brought euphoric, such a feeling, and it was it wasn't understandable. It was unrelatable to anything else I had ever done in my life, and it was bringing tears to my eyes. And I try to tell people, like, you don't understand, like, really, until you haven't had it for a while and your body really needs it, or you're trying it for the first time, the way you're going to react that you're unaware of, you just can't possibly understand it. And I tried to tell them about this the other night, and the only thing I can relate it to is what some of the individuals have gone raw meat are explaining to me. Like, it's just, you don't think about it until you have it, and then the feeling makes it completely understandable. So the nutrition must be optimal.
Yeah, I think like buried deep down, like you can live. I think like your body, you kind of know you're living in denial when you're in that prolonged veganism state. Uh, Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Like I think your body knows that you're living in denial, but your mind keeps fooling you. We have all this in our environment saying keep doing it. Like all these people, this pressure, this agenda to keep eating all those plants and veganism and everything, and I think it just messes with reality of what's going on. And then because that happened to me too. I think it happens to a lot of vegans. They'll have salmon or eggs or something, and they're like in tears because it's like, oh my God, like what have I done? Like that's the mindset I've gone through too. Is like, what have I done to myself? And you learn it just immediately. And this was not right. I am sorry, my body. I'm sorry, my friends and family, that you had to deal with me being B12 deficient and erratic and weak, like dead weight to y'all. Like, and so stuff like that just honestly keeps me going, and keeps me wanting to be stronger at what I do and keep exploring. Nose to tail, just keep doing what I'm doing. Like I don't want to stop because of those. I've had those exact same feelings, like guilt almost to myself and to my people around me. And so, yeah, it keeps you going, it keeps you motivated for sure.
Yeah, it's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. But when it starts to set in, and that epiphany of, oh my goodness, I was wrong, but this is so right, and it is a kind of a rewarding thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with that.
So, how active are you? I know you ride a bike all over the place. You say you're farming, you're doing the butchering. You've got a home gym that you built out. Is your daily activity like crazy now, or you
It's
consider
pretty
that?
nonstop.
Yeah.
It's how I like stay entertained. I don't own a car actually. I was thinking about it recently, but it's not happening. I've had a car in almost a decade. Um, and even then I was still riding my bike because I just love riding. It helps me mentally a lot, and to think of all these things that I do. And I honestly credit the bike itself and my time on it as being one of the most medicinal things I've ever done for me in my life. That's a whole different story. But
No, it's completely part of your story. Moving meditation. I'm in tune with it. Let's hear about it anytime you want to share.
yeah, I mean, so I kind of like taught myself how to ride a bike when I was 9 years old. And that was, kind of like when my parents were separating and it was just all this drama going on. I didn't want anything with anyone. And so it was a good outlet. I taught myself. It was great. And I returned to it later on, uh, 18 or 19 years old. Even though I had a car, I was still commuting with it on all these roads that no one bikes on, like back home in Southern Maryland. Like no one's doing what I did. I just did it because I was like, I just need to do it again. And for whatever reason, my hippie vegan days, save the planet, man, like stop burning gas and all this stuff. And um, but then it just turned into like, I need this for my mental health. And I remember after my anorexia at times coming back home the next day, I rode my bike around town to my grandmother's house, and my family was pissed at me. I was Johns Hopkins, they didn't want me to bike anymore. They didn't want me to exercise, basically, because they had to protect themselves, their wallet, their bottom line. If you relapse, it makes them look bad, to be completely honest. And so anyways, I went straight to biking because I knew for whatever reason, this is what I need to do. I couldn't explain it to them. My family was pissed at me for many times for choosing a bike, and because I really almost biked myself to death, um, and I was fully intending to as well, quite honestly. But it's still such a unique tool for your mindset, because I firmly believe as part of healing, you need to adopt this mindset of like reluctance. Maybe not necessarily anarchy, but reluctance to what's going on around you. And so I was a big bike commuter guy, and everyone else around me was driving. They're in their own lane, they're obeying the rules, stopping, they're going, they're yielding, they're going with everyone else. On the bike, you're saying no to everything. You're forming your own route every single day, you're in the elements every single day. You're not going to feel good every single day, but you figure out um, how to get to that destination you need to get to today. And that just goes into your head, and that just goes into your life. And so I love bike commuting. It's been really symbolic of how I think I've gotten great results when, there's other people that I've seen along the way of my journey. I fear for them. I don't think they've gotten as great results as I have. And so I think about them a lot. And that's not to brag or anything. I really care for them. But I really credit the mentality I've gained from bike commuting year round in all sorts of weather that I should not have done. But it's helped me a lot. It's helped me to think the way that I do, reframe things and whatnot. So I was thinking recently, like, hey, maybe get a car. That way I can go to places and whatnot faster. But the bike's been too good to me, so I want to keep doing that. I want to keep promoting it because I think that more people can benefit from this alternative. Biking as an alternative, it can really do things to your mindset that it can go on in other parts of your life. And so that's something I think about a lot.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Humans are far more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And
Mhm.
most people are addicted to comfort in almost every way in their life. So if you can get one thing that inspires you to embrace discomfort, I'm all for it. There was a documentary probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. This guy named Slow Mo. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was a doctor in, I believe, North Carolina, and he went through some really seriously traumatic events and ended up getting rid of his practice and retiring and moving out to California. But he adopted roller skating, and he roller skates down the Venice boardwalk every day. But he does it in a peculiar way. He goes in slow mo, and he's got these exaggerated movements. And people look at him and probably go, "Oh, what's wrong with this guy?" Or "He's weird," or this and that. But it inspired this documentary, which broke down the science of what he was doing, and he was completely dealing with trauma, but there is actually science to it that they illustrated the effects in the inner ear of movement, of forward progression and movement. And we're not getting the same thing from an automobile that we would from a bike or
Oh,
a
cool.
skateboard or a surfboard or roller skates or any of these other things where you most likely are meditating. You're doing profound amount of thinking, but you're also, stepping out into the elements, and you're making this part of your life and embracing discomfort. And you probably have so many different modalities of therapy that you're engaging there that you don't have to explain it. Like, you just envelop it and do it. And that's awesome to me. And it's just another layer of your story, I think, that is worth sharing.
For sure.
So what else are you doing? You in the gym every day in your home build out?
Well, it's funny. I just came from the sauna earlier today. I'll probably go back to the sauna after this. I do like the sauna a lot, and but as far as exercise go, I've gone through my own like phases. Besides, the bike and whatnot, throughout my life, like I was never really big into sports, so I like to work out on my own terms. And I remember in high school, I was big into CrossFit. That's when it was really emerging and becoming huge. And then then calisthenics as well, like the street workout stuff and everything. Like, it was crazy. I never got to that level. And then I got in like various strongman stuff. I'm not a strongman guy at all. But just like the awkward lifting of objects, or lifting of awkward objects, rocks, cinder blocks, whatever. And functional stuff like that. But I always go back to calisthenics, just because I can do it anywhere. I'm on my feet outside all the time. Hey, let me just do pull-ups off this tree branch or something. But really, a lot of my exercises these days, since I'm biking a lot or working a lot, labor, I do almost like rehabilitative kind of ish exercises for that. So I'll do a lot of dead hangs. I'll do a lot of flexed hangs or German hangs, which is hard to explain what that is. So a lot of hanging, a lot of various kinds of hangs, just from bars above me. And then I'll do back bridges as well because biking puts you in this weird position. So to put it back, it's not fun and it really exposes a lot of weaknesses in my body, but it's just important because I think it's good for my spine. It's good to also mentally challenge myself. Like, hey, I don't know if biking is like ergonomically we're supposed to move like that, but you know what? I'm just going to go the opposite direction and challenge it anyways. So I like back bridges and dips. So it really just it's pretty much calisthenics now, but nothing like crazy. I'm a street athlete kind of guy. I just do what feels good.
You're ahead of the curve actually, because I got a couple friends that train professional athletes, and a lot of these guys don't find it until they're 30 that they've been doing repetitive movements in one direction, and then they got to go and do the opposite to really open themselves up, relieve pain, balance their bodies, so to speak.
Mhm.
So I saw the pulley system that you have in your gym that you just rigged for the deer the other day. That's
Oh yeah, yeah.
that's wild. So you pull a deer up, you bleed them, and then you harvest them there in the gym or just outside the gym.
Yeah, that was actually that's fun. That was back home. So that was I'm from Southern Maryland, so that was back home in Maryland for the winter when I was there. I'm currently in Vermont. And so that was my home gym back in high school and everything. But so that deer, that was roadkill. I found outside the road, I biked with it back. That was very entertaining. Um and yeah, it just worked out well because I normally just pull cinder blocks down and I'm like, well, this is awesome. I finally get to put this to use. And it worked. I don't know how heavy it was. It wasn't a huge deer, granted, but I know with all the pulleying that I did, it contributed and it made me feel pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Like, sweet. This was functional.
So, I mean, you're gonna have to share with us on this one. Me and my dad have hit animals before. We actually went back to get a hog that we hit once, and it was already gone. We've seen fresh deer. What makes you, or what do you look for when you find something like that to know? Okay, this is good. This isn't good. What's the deciding factors in there?
Well, I mainly just go after deer, quite honestly. Sure, there's raccoons, possums, squirrels, or anything like that. I just prefer deer, ruminant animals, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at the bruising, like how big's the bruise, where's the bruise. I don't need that part. You also just like the sense of smell because when you kill the animal, the blood will just stay all in the body. It's not going anywhere, and so that just changes the taste of it. Goes bad much faster when you can't bleed it out appropriately. So the back strap is generally always good, unless it got like destroyed in the accident along the spine, which it normally doesn't. Normally it gets like hit in the arm, leg, whatever. Uh, the back strap is generally your best bet for a roadkill deer. I've heard that from a lot of guys actually. They'll just take just the back strap and go. If you can take the whole deer with you, I mean, obviously you want to call your local game wardens. I have the app for Maryland to like log it in, like, hey, I got this deer from right here, this spot, this day, and it's legal because they want to track it. I think that's important to like help your local game wardens and departments out, and so that's very important. It's also illegal to just take an animal with you, a large animal that they're recording. Illegal as in you don't want to get caught with it. I almost did. Um, but uh, but anyways, yeah, the smell, the blood accumulated in it. Be careful of that. Just look at if there's any shiny bruises on it and just skip that. But also, you just taste it. You'll taste it immediately. Like, oh, I don't want to eat this anymore. This is really bad. Stuff like that.
So I saw you had found one in front of somebody's house, and you were like, "I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get this kind of quick because it was in relation to somebody's home. It was in eyesight. How
Mhm.
how did that go? How was it? How interesting was that process?
Oh, pretty good.
Did you
Yeah,
actually see the homeowner?
did I see that? No, I don't think that I did. I think it was just in and out real quickly, if I remember correctly. I've had too many like bad run-ins with people, fortunately. I mean, it could have been really bad, but not that I remember.
So for those listening, describe your bike setup and how you would do this.
So I have uh it's funny, I actually just ordered a custom made bike. I'm in the process of that. That's a whole nother story. But I have a gravel bike, and with that, there's a bike trailer on the back by Burley. That's the #1 bike trailer brand. I'm not a sponsor for them, but I recommend them. And they're your go-to bike brand for hauling anything. It has two wheels on the back. It can hold up to 100 pounds. That's what they say. I put up to 140 pounds in it, and it sucks, but it can go up to 140 pounds if you really wanted to. Two wheels, cost $350, so it's kind of expensive, but if you do what I do, it's worth it. And yeah, I just put all my belongings in there, dead animals in there, I haul sheep back or dead deer, and I just bring it back to wherever I'm living. And yeah, it's been great. It's really fun.
Yeah, listeners have to go to your Instagram to check out your setup with that. You had a couple of knives in there. You had a compartment for your meat, place to like store stuff. So you get caught in weather, you've got no issues. You know you've got
Yeah,
it
it's
system
waterproof.
that's dialed. Yeah,
It
you
has a
got a system.
waterproof top. I mean, it sucks. The bottom isn't waterproof, so if I go through a puddle, it will get things kind of wet, but it's not too bad.
What's the next for you?
Well, I'm a farmer, Maple Wind Farm here in Richmond, Vermont. It's my end of my 5th season, and we're ending here later in November. And so it's part of seasonal work. I just have to figure out what's next. There's no farm work in the winter. All the birds be dead by then. And so, yeah, just kind of figuring out where to go from there. Tentatively planning back home in Maryland. I want to stay in the agriculture scene because I think that's really important. When you're someone invested in like health, nutrition, um, I think you should stay in you should be involved in the food system in some capacity because it's easy to just buy things and tell people what to eat just based off of labels and everything. But that's not me. That's not what I like to do. And so I want to be in hard labor. I want to be challenged, and I want to be outside, raising food for other people. But I've had enough of farming chickens. It's burning me out. So I'm tentatively looking at oyster farming, uh, back home in Maryland near the Chesapeake Bay. If I can make that happen, that's a big if. We'll see. I'm mainly just chasing good food, good people. Those are the non-negotiables. I may also just come back up to Vermont because I know I have good sheep up here. Maryland doesn't, so I just had to weigh out the pros and cons. Uh, the sheep butchering has been great to me as a person, and it's provided me a lot of purpose in life. And so, yeah, I want to be in agriculture somehow, farming somehow, whether for me or for other people. And so I'm just kind of figuring out from there. And still going to keep biking around, best my capabilities. I think it's important to show. Um, Also, just the biking world, because I'm in the biking world as well. I want to show the biking world like what proper nutrition looks like. I know we're all different. I'm not saying I have the answers to everything, but something that's always bothered me about in the biking world is that they eat the worst food ever. They eat the food that I ate in Hopkins. They'll eat like all this gas station carbohydrate, sugar rich crap, and just because they're burning so many calories, and I don't like that. My goal going forward is I want to keep showing like, hey, let's eat lots of fat and protein. Like our bodies are probably are us. Yeah, no, they are designed to eat fat and protein. Let's be real. I don't care if you eat carbs, but let's prioritize fat and protein from animal sources. And let's get this to the bikers because I'm tired of seeing bikers only eat carbs. It's I don't like it anymore. So I just want to show that.
Absolutely a challenge worth taking up. If you pay attention to distance runners, they're another group that they really put a lot of miles on their body, both actively and figuratively, because of the nature of what they're doing. Their diets are off, and all of a sudden you're dealing with something else. These people don't look well after a few years. So the awareness, you get that out there, you're making an impact on the world that we all need for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Are you racing? Are you doing any biking events of?
I'd like to as well. I was thinking about that. I've actually never rode my bike with anyone, alongside anyone. It's been purely bike commuting. But I would like to see where I stand alongside others. So I feel like that's the only way to make this more of a statement. Is I love seeing these low carb athletes out there in whatever sport they're doing, because I feel like that's how you prove something. Like Sean Baker, for instance, eating just ribeyes, breaking world records. He's 57. Like, that's what got me so hooked into this, was Sean Baker and his athleticism. I've, again, never really been much of an athlete, but I want to see where I can put biking alongside others and see, like, hey, I can get these pretty good results on the bike, and by just eating like meat, fat, raw meat, so I just got to go out there and prove it. And so that I would like to do that next year.
So did you get into regenerative agriculture a lot when you were down in Georgia, or have you checked out Joel Salatin or any of the other farmers that are putting on blueprints out there for that?
Yeah, I know Joel. I guess he's in Virginia, in Swip, Virginia, and I've never been down there personally. I know he's big in like the Weston A. Price Foundation, and I like the Weston A. Price Foundation. I like what Joel's doing. Like, he's really spreading the word. I have some of his books. I've read his books. He's a very passionate man. And I remember at White Oak Pastures, we had to read. Oh man, we definitely had to read into like Regenerative Ag and whatnot. I can't remember. I was on the tip of my tongue, but the organization that we studied from and whatnot, it was cool. I know the basics of Regenerative Ag. I kind of just work and like I do what people tell me to do, kind of. But I think that I have a good gist of like rotational grazing and pasture management by this point. Yeah.
And Salatin actually put out a couple of videos. It was my first education on chicken harvesting on roasters, and that's little setup that you showed the other day was just identical to what he had showed, that people could make small investment and then start their own chicken farming with. So I thought it was an interesting connection. Wondered if you had any. So
yeah, I mean, my boss here at Maple Wind, he's like BFFs with Joel Salatin. We've gotten last year. I shouldn't say this, but we lost a bunch of turkeys in the flood, and so we tried our best to save them. But my boss here at the farm, he drove down to Virginia and he bought a bunch of turkeys from Joel Salatin and drove right back up. Awesome. So they're cool. They're cool friends.
Awesome. So did you work with laying hens at all, or have you just done roaster processing?
We have a bunch of laying hens. I'm not sure how much we have right now. They're my favorite to work with, actually, because they're still kind of primal. I've heard someone describe it as they're like dinosaurs, and if you look at them, like, they'll eat each other alive. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that either, but if there's a weak link, like, they will eat the bird alive. The bird will be staring at its guts being pulled apart, and you're just like watching a horror movie, but you get numb to it. You're like, well, that sucks. Then you just do your chores. That's how that goes. Yeah, they run like raptors too. It's insane.
I've got a little flock here, and they pick off the weak links. They kill rats. They kill all kinds of stuff, and just bring it over to you and look at you like, get this thing out of here. They eat everything in the world that moves, and I had no idea how much they like protein, and almost any leftovers that you can throw out there, they're all game for it for sure.
Yeah, they get ferocious over it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll keep a flock as long as I can. I kind of love those layers, man, and love having the fresh eggs every day too.
That's really nice.
So we got your worst experiences. We got your best experiences. What is your advice to somebody who's really just on the fence, maybe thinking about, all right, why not? I've done carnivore, or I've leaned towards carnivore. Maybe it's time for them to try raw meat diet. What do you recommend? How do we go?
That's a tough one, and people ask me that a lot. I feel like you kind of just have to learn. Fortunately, there's people like me and a bunch of other people on social media who are just proving it. You have to be comfortable with the fact that there are people out there that are doing it. Why would you doubt it? Just do it. But I would say start off with raw eggs, a raw egg yolk. It might be, now I think, like, if your concern is that, hey, can I physically handle this, the texture, the new things to digest? I think that's a fair thing to be concerned about. Start slowly. Again, eat some raw fish a little bit, a raw egg, small amount of raw ground beef, raw cheese even. Like, you're going to be fine. Don't do what I'm doing right away. If you've never done it before, it'll be hard. And so, but I really don't think that the person needs to be concerned with bacteria and parasites. Whole germ versus terrain theory. I'm not an expert on it. I was never really afraid of it for whatever reason, because I just thought it was all cool. My biggest fear of raw meat was I thought I was going to de-evolve as a human. As a Homo sapien, would I turn into a chimpanzee? Really dumb, because I thought cooking made us human. And so I was like, is my brain gonna shrink? Like, I can't afford that. I'm not that smart as it is. But like, it it's fine. I think I feel slightly more intelligent than before, if I say so myself. And it's just really fun. And so you're not going to evolve. You probably won't get food poisoning. So just get that out of your head. Texture, taste, whatever, that comes naturally over time. It really does. So just
your palate shifted then over amount of time.
It does, and I never struggled at the beginning. I know a lot of people did, but I've come to like I noticed that I have even gotten more improved in desiring it and like swallowing it more, chewing it more, like just yearning for it more. And it's just effortless now.
Is there something specific that you crave over everything else that you could eat every day, or that you would if you could?
Probably oysters.
Really?
I love salts and minerals. I don't know why. I love salty mineral rich dense foods. I also love brains and bone marrow as well. I love fat and I love minerals. I can have those things every day, never get tired of them. That's definitely what I crave, is like fat and minerals. Of course, protein, but protein's easy enough to come by, I feel like. It's what you're fighting for. What I've noticed I'm fighting for in carnivore is enough fat and enough cool minerals like what oysters have. Because protein's easy, I feel like, to get.
Yeah. It's funny. I went straight carnivore, went hardcore for a while. But training jujitsu, for some reason, when I reintroduced sourdough bread, my mom makes homemade sourdough, just my energy felt better, more sustained. And I just, after a while, I have a feeling it's because I just could not possibly get enough fat. I just couldn't get enough to really kind of keep up with the demands that I was putting on myself, as far as both training in the morning, working out, and just staying busy.
I think that's where a lot of people could maybe not be as successful with carnivore, is especially in America. It is so hard to find enough fat here, and like our cuts of meat, everything's being trimmed off. A lot of animals are lean; they're getting slaughtered early, whatever. And I think people are surprised by how much fat they should probably be eating, or like can physically eat. Like, I eat a ton, and I just noticed that I feel so much better when I eat. I'm still surprised sometimes by how much raw fat I'll eat, like how much it is. I'm like, wow, I feel great. Almost like prioritizing fat over meat is just what works, I feel like. And so it's hard to wrap that in your head in today's society, but I think that works.
It seems to be the resounding message with individuals that I've talked to that have had extreme success. It is just eat more fat, eat more fat.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Awesome, brother. You have an amazing story, man. Congratulations on defeating something that a lot of people unfortunately will not defeat. Like you said, there was a lady that was in there in and out, in and out, in and out on 4-year cycles, and I'm sure there's been many people lost to this that shouldn't have, and have unfortunately subsided. Any takeaways, any messages other than, start slow on your raw meat diet that you want to share?
Yeah, I would say what helps with so nutrition is complicated. I'm a big fan of bioindividuality. Sure, there are things inherently, like, I don't think prolonged veganism is good for the body. I think there's certain nutrients in meat that we need. And with that being said, I think that nutrition, to help someone out, it should be viewed more as an art than a science. Because I feel like nutrition science, there's a lot of bias, there's a lot of lobbying. It's just black and white, people hating each other. It's a nasty thing on the internet. And you can find nutrition science that proves anything right. You know, veganism's right, carnivore's right. Then when you're trying to get better, that's just making it worse for you. I've been there. It's very complicated and sucks. I've just learned, and this will take some time, but viewing nutrition as an art, and viewing your body, your health as an art piece. Like, you're the sculptor, you're constantly sculpting it, and so you got to choose the right tools at the right time. And carnivore is a tool, veganism is a tool. Like, you can be vegan for a short term. I'm okay with that. I don't do it, but I think that there's no harm in doing that. That's where you're at in your life. Just know that it doesn't have to be black and white. You can do things for a short period of time and go to the next thing. Veganism is like do or die. You're this or you're out of the club and we're going to kill you. You can always go in and out. You can try new things. It doesn't have to be black or white nutrition. And so just have fun with it. Try not to get stressed out, because that was my biggest problem. I lost a lot of sleep over it and got so stressed out. Like, meal timing, 16-8, intermittent fasting, fat to protein ratios, numbers. It's going to make things worse, having that stress and burden on you. Learn to listen to your body. You're going to do just fine.
Awesome. InstaFrank95 on
Yep.
Instagram. InstaFrank95. Any other places where these guys can find you, follow you? Is that pretty much it?
That's my social media. If you want to text me, my number is 240-298-0427. I'm a little busy with work or whatever, but I'll text you.
Awesome. So reach out, follow InstaFrank95 on Instagram. Check out some of his amazing posts that, like, you gotta go and check them out, because the descriptions here in audio or video podcast just aren't going to do it justice. Frank, thank you for joining us. You got an incredible story. I appreciate your time and actually taking the risk, stepping on out there and showing us what can be done nutritionally.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, always down to chat whenever. And this has been a blast. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming, Frank.
Awesome. Thank you.